Aloha mai kakou. My name is Amelia Sokos, and I'm the president of the College Democrats here at UH As students who are passionate about civic engagement, the College Democrats are committed to creating spaces where informed dialogue and public service thrive on our campus. Events like today's student-led forum and Q&A are only possible because of the dedication of our executive board members, our general membership, and the broader support of our community. We are grateful to those who continue to empower students at UH Manoa to engage thoughtfully with the issues shaping Hawaii's future. Today, we are honored to welcome Senator Keohokalole to discuss issues that matter deeply to you as students, educators, and voters. The Senator will begin with sharing his journey into public service, what motivates him as a legislator, and his top priorities for this legislative session. Afterward, we'll open the floor to your questions on topics such as climate change, education, healthcare, immigration, and issues affecting our campus community. Following the Q&A, we invite you to stay for an informal talk story session and light refreshments outside of the auditorium. Briefly, Senator Keohokalole is a proud graduate of the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where he earned both his undergraduate degree and his law degree. As an alumnus of our university, he understands firsthand the values of this campus and the importance of preparing the next generation of leaders of public service. He represents Hawaii's 24th Senate District, which includes Kaneohe and Kailua, and currently serves in Senate leadership. In the legislature, he has focused on addressing the rising cost of living in Hawaii. His work includes stabilizing condominium insurance markets, advancing funding for affordable housing, and strengthening enforcement against illegal vacation rentals. During the COVID-19 pandemic, as chair of the Health Committee, he worked with medical experts and legislative leaders to protect hospital capacity and improve access to care, including supporting providers who serve Medicaid patients. He also helped lead efforts to codify access to abortion in Hawaii state law. His career reflects a deep commitment to public service and strengthening our communities, values that align closely with the mission of the College Democrats. Please join me in giving Senator Keohokalole a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for your introduction and your and for putting up so many flyers on campus that I got a call from the administration. Well done. I've gotten a call from the administration about flyering campus before. It was a long time ago. I'm Jared. Thank you very much for coming again. I grew up in Kaneohe and Kailua on the windward side. Lived in Hawaii my whole life except for a few years where after undergrad I moved to New York with my then girlfriend now life. And we lived in Brooklyn, New York. We met at UH Manoa as leaders in the new student orientation program this time. And I'm 42 years old, and I realized coming over here, especially walking down to Taekwondo, that was a really long time ago. And so I don't know how much it's changed over here, but I'm excited to sort of find out. I'm really curious. I spent 8 years at the University of Hawaii, and I would have stayed longer if I could get up to visit. 5 years as an undergrad, and then we went to move to the continent. And then when we wanted to start a family, we moved home. And we were very lucky to even get back. Part of why I got involved in public service was that when we got back, it was so difficult to make it happen and to start a family here in the community where we were raised, because we wanted our kids to live in our family. That's something we did. That I wanted to get into public service to try and reverse the trend that's actually happening, which is more young people are moving away from Hawaii, starting families, their careers outside of Hawaii that are actually coming home. And yeah, so that's why I got involved in public service. I ran as a big underdog in 2014, not really knowing how to do anything political against an organized, well-funded opponent, and we won. And ever since then, I've just been trying to work on systemic change in Hawaii to bring our government up to speed with the modern society that we have here in Hawaii, but also to try and make things easier for people who grew up here or who came here and are never leaving, to just live lives that prosper, and to do it in a way that respects our history and our culture and our environment. So it's not an easy job. It's often really difficult to get things exactly right in mistakes all the time. But I really do enjoy the work, and I love being a part of the change. And it really excites me. So it obviously excites you guys, that's why you're here. And I don't want to go on too long, and if I ever do at any point in this conversation, just raise your hand, and I'm happy to just get right into the questions, because I'm sure some of you came with things that you want to talk about. In Hawaii, around the world, whatever out there. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it for me. We first got involved, my wife and I first got involved in politics in New York. So when we moved there in the fall of 2007. No, in the fall of 2008. And she got into a master's program at NYU, and I decided to go off. I graduated here in journalism in 2006. And I couldn't find a job that I found interesting. And so we decided to just make a change. And we went up there, and I was going to work for my uncle had some friends in law, and I was going to paralegal at a law firm in New York. And we showed up on a Saturday, and on the following Tuesday, Lehman Brothers, which was an investment bank, filed for bankruptcy, and the Great Recession of 2008 happened. So we were there 3 days, and then the recession happened. And for millennials like me, that was 5 years into the Iraq War, and that was enough. I was going to get involved, one way or another, because the life I had known after high school was war and then the recession. And the most unjust recession, under the most unjust and grimy conditions that had ever happened in my lifetime. So we've had it. And it just so happened we showed up at NYU when MoveOn.org, it was the first digital political operation. That they were really the first to use digital technology to organize people. They were flyering for volunteers in Manhattan and having college students carpool down to Pennsylvania to campaign for Barack Obama in 2008, because Pennsylvania was a swing state. So we knocked on doors in Philadelphia, we canvassed, we did volunteer recruitment, we just got involved. And he won, and we got really excited and sort of never looked back. So from there, I came home. I went to law school at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, got into policy again, got a certificate in Native Hawaiian law. My family is the neighborhood I grew up in, runs in my genealogy. My family traces roots back 500 years to that community at the end of Waikoloa Road, in the sort of innermost corner of Kaneohe Bay on the windward side. There are 40 members of my generation in that big Hawaiian family on Waikoloa Road. There are 7 of us left in the neighborhood. The rest have moved away. Many of them have had challenges of substance abuse. I've had trouble accessing help. I have had trouble navigating the systems and are just getting burdened by the pressure of how expensive it is in Hawaii and how little opportunity there is to make things happen. Make a life. So that's me. That's why I got involved. I started in the house, mostly trying to focus on innovation. I worked at the University of Hawaii to put together their tech transfer and innovation program so that entrepreneurs can utilize and benefit the technology that they're all part of in research here in Hawaii. If people want to start up a company, they want to try and take their technology and run with it. That was actually a violation of the ethics code prior to the year 2016. And most of the FANGs, like the big tech companies in Silicon Valley, all started either in Berkeley or in Stanford, and it's college dropouts mostly that were doing research and technology there, and they spun up their ideas into big companies And they got two babies, I think, over the world. So now we're fighting them. But the point is to just provide opportunities for people in Hawaii who want to make things happen, who want to be part of change, to be able to do it here. And if it creates economic opportunity and jobs that can help people afford to stay here, then we should be trying to make, find ways to make that stuff work. So we changed that around. I ran for the Senate in 2018. I became the health chair during COVID. We can talk all about that. That was a really wild period for Hawaii. If you actually go back and look at the sort of after action report on the pandemic in Hawaii, Pew Research did a study of how each state responded to COVID during the pandemic. One of the key metrics they looked at was how many days the state's healthcare system was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed was basically their overall metric for, if your daughter broke her ankle at a soccer game, would she be able to get seen at an emergency room? And if she couldn't, because the hospital was full of COVID patients, then that's the standard. The average number of days a state in the United States was overwhelmed was 200 during the pandemic. Hawaii was 0. It's 0 days. I think that says a lot about our culture, about the sort of unique dynamic that we have here. But it came at a large cost. There's a lot of backlash that has happened since. And we're still sort of trying to adjust to it. After that, I took over the Commerce Committee. This year, I'm responsible for Bitcoin, for AI, we're doing some fun stuff, pushing the tech companies on social media. I don't know if you saw the ring camera thing during the Super Bowl or on after that. Citizens United, we just did a very interesting bill on that we're trying to push across. Business regulation, finance, insurance, all that sort of complicated stuff is my direct responsibility. But I'm the chair of the White Caucus. I'm a member of the Environmental Caucus, the GTP Caucus, and I'm a member of the Senate. So all of the issues that touch residents in Hawaii are our responsibility. And say that I'm an expert or, will have the answer you want to hear on any of them. But I'm happy to talk about it. And I really do I look forward to the chance for us to talk because I don't know what you guys are seeing right now from the perspective that you're seeing it. That's what I realized when I was coming down. I'm not an undergrad at UHM anymore. It was the best 5 years of my life. I would have stayed longer if I could, but life goes on, right? So I look forward to taking your questions. Anybody have any? Okay. What about you?
Thank you very much for your right now in this country, we're living under the shadow of what I believe is a tyrant who's trying to take away many things like free speech. And that's something that's really affecting stuff here on campus and like executive orders and stuff that affect. There's been like the campus right now, they're trying to change the free speech policies and policies related to academic freedom. You and I, if you weren't aware of that, you and I can talk more about it later. But I guess what I'm saying is what can you do in the state senate to help protect free speech and academic freedom here at University of Hawaii and just in general in the state to protect us from like what's going on in the federal government right now, especially as like they're trying to ban talks of like certain things that you can't talk about, LGBTQ stuff, even like systemic racism, things like that.
Yeah, thank you. The primary concern for us in the Senate regarding the University of Hawaii are the cuts to university funding that happened during DOGE last year. And part of the reason why I start with that is those cuts during DOGE sort of set the table. It sort of spread the dark cloud over higher education institutions across the country. The cuts happened first in research, especially in public health. I think Johns Hopkins University, which is the premier medical research university in the world, lost 2,000 workers to Doge. And so the that first culling of funding and positions was to set the table that the federal government is willing to come in and really hurt institutions. And so after the attacks on Harvard University and then on the TV networks, I'm not surprised that you guys are feeling the pressure when it comes to having universities maintain their status as free speech spaces for people to express themselves, especially for anything to just explore the issues and come to a decision. Learn about things and inform opinions of their own. This is not the type of regime that wants to encourage that. It's the type of regime that likes to tell you what you should think and not encourage you to go and form opinions of your own. So, we have real challenges right now in terms of figuring out how we can protect the pockets of the university that are vulnerable. The DEI perceived or related programs are the ones that are most vulnerable. As chair of the Hawaiian Caucus, we are constantly having, we're constantly in communication with the members of the Hawaiian community around Keohokalole, the congressional delegation, just to make sure that if moves toward dismantling indigenous education programs or other kinds of ethnic education. Well, so at the state level, there are two things. Number one is we're responsible for the defense, right? If the programs get cut, or they're on the chopping block, or they're being leveraged, because as an intimidation tactic, what's the plan for what happens if they do decide to come in? Is it a lawsuit? The way the Supreme Court has restructured authority around the president, they give him the benefit of the doubt. So even if something is blatantly constitutional, it'll take a year. It's 18 months for them to render a decision. So we're the ones that have to figure out, okay, what is the plan to protect these programs, regardless of what the federal government does. And then the other part of it is just not falling for that kind of intimidation, those intimidation tactics, still allowing these places to be areas where people can freely express themselves. It's really frustrating. It's really frustrating where part of it is just keeping everybody engaged. If there are particular programs that are at risk, then we need to know about it so that we can take action. The legislative session in the state of Hawaii was from January to May. And then that's it every year. So if something happens right now, we still have the opportunity to take some action. None of this stuff is easy. We have, his term is 4 years. I don't think he'll get a third. But it looks like he'll be in for the next 3, right? So we all got to work together. I will say on the state side, there are lots of ways that we can assert our own state authority, and we're doing that. So I introduced a slate of bills that the ACLU put forward on ICE, 10 bills, making sure that the state employee and the governor maintains complete authority over the National Guard, refusing those 287G agreements that require collaboration between local law enforcement and ICE. No masks, no federal transfer of military, so that we don't see the escalation of use of force with our local law enforcement that we're seeing in places like this, right? Did you guys know in Chicago earlier this year, Zach, was it in the summer?
Fall.
In the fall in Chicago, ICE raided an apartment building by flying a Black Hawk helicopter and having ICE agents rappel out of the helicopter onto the roof. Something like 50% of the residents there is horrific enough that they're using combat tactics against people who don't have criminal histories. But 50% of the members of the residents of that building were U.S. citizens. And so to imagine living, having them fly a combat aircraft in to do a raid of an apartment building, incomprehensible. And so, Thomas Jefferson, a conservative icon, founding father was against a standing army. He wrote very adamantly that the United States should be diffuse in power, the states should have all the power and authority, including the power to own slaves. That was the problematic part. But it was because he was against the ability for the federal government to centralize power on the locals. So when we have kids coming for field trips, I'm a little bit going long on this, so I'll take a quick second. But when we have elementary school kids coming for field trips, the first thing I start with is summarize the Constitution in 2 words. You guys have heard before, because it's now a rallying cry, it's no king. All of the sections of the Constitution were specifically designed right after the Revolutionary War to ensure that the new country they created wouldn't allow one person to consolidate power. And he is testing that concept in every possible way he can. And so if we have to fight on all fronts, then that's the job, right? That's my responsibility as a legislator, but that's what you guys are here to, right? So we can look at
I was curious, Senator, you're challenging Ed case.
Yeah.
And Bella is also challenging. Are you not apprehensive that you will split the progressive vote and just return Ed case to office? And I was also curious whether, how would you characterize yourself as progressive, and would you vote for impeachment?
Okay. I think that in Hawaii, elected officials don't get challenged enough. I've served in office 12 years. I think I'm pretty good at my job, and I think I'm well liked in my district to deserve support. But I ran unopposed in 2 cycles, and I didn't think it was a good thing. You can't have a democracy unless people have a choice. That's the whole point of democracy, is you should be able to choose. And so the fact that I think in the last cycle in 2024, I think something like 35% of seats up for election were unopposed. That's really bad. It's not a reflection of how well we're doing as incumbents. It's a reflection of apathy in the community. That's really bad. Now, on the flip side, you could argue that people are exercising their right to speak by refusing to. But where does that get us? What sort of conclusions can you draw from that? I think you can draw that things are not going, and that they're not feeling motivated enough to choose. So people deserve a choice. I think I'm supposed to speak just on state level stuff, but I'm not happy with the way things are going. And I think we need more urgency to address the problems that you guys are all here to talk about. I think the fact that we're sliding into fascism. And if you guys are wondering what else is, sliding into fascism, it's really problematic. There's a centralization of authority in the executive branch, and that's not the way this system was designed. So I think we're in a moment where voters are upset about what is happening right now. You're seeing it in election results across the country. Fascinatingly exciting election results across the country. The pendulum is swinging way the other way, as it should, as it was designed. And the major priority for us right now soon is not about, honestly, not about whose ideologies are going to prevail. It's about whether we're going to have a fair election. Right? Whether we're going to continue to have a choice. And so we have lots of tools at the state level to make sure, at least here with a free and fair election, we're not going to just fold when the intimidation tactics. So, I mean, that's sort of my feeling with that.
As you mentioned about Trump administration is coordinating and giving that action powers to the military branch as well as the ICHs. As you are working on this, what is your solution? Or how are you for
So, as bad as the Supreme Court has been during the Trump administration, they've provided the path out of this pretty consistently in their decisions. Almost every consequential decision they've made that's broken in favor of Trump, even if it was wrong, usually has concluded with, and Congress can change this decision by changing the law. If you look at the Constitution, Article 1, the very first part that the founders decided to sit down and write was the legislative power. They established Congress first. Because again, these are guys that just fought and had friends and comments die in the Revolutionary War to break away from a tyrant. So Article 1 is the establishment of Congress, a legislative process. We can pass laws to rein this in. In fact, there's a vote coming, I think this week or next week, on Iran. There's a war powers vote coming on Iran. And I would like to see how all of our elected officials, including the ones from below me, side on that. Because specific officials that currently serve in our legislative delegation supported the last war we got ourselves into in Iran. And so finally, for the first time since Trump retook office, Congress is actually doing its job and weighing in on issues that are their primary responsibility. They set the laws, they set the budget, they have the power of the purse. They direct spending and they direct the administration to do things. And then the president executes them. That's not the way it's working right now. He's just calling all the shots and can't go on like that. So I do think we need to win in the midterms. I'll tell you, having a Joe Manchin type in Congress, if the midterms turn out to be, tightly contested, having someone on the Democratic side who will break off and side with the Republicans, I think is a bad look for Hawaii. I think it's bad for America. And I don't think it gets us where we need to go. And so that's part of why I'm doing some of the things I'm doing. And, that's how.
Going back to the topic of, I know you already addressed the feedback. We're not really worried about the money aspect of it. Already made this but I heard from some people that they think they're kind of being right now. It's kind of already going to that campaign effort to
Yeah, it's part of what I'm here. I need some help. Best on social media. I actually prefer to legislate and just organize. There are some interesting questions that I have about this legislative cycle. I think one, when I first got started, one sort of veteran political figure in Honolulu told me the candidate that wins with the youth vote, this is a well-known political adage. He said the candidate that wins with the youth vote will be the first candidate that wins with the youth vote. In the state of Hawaii, there are more voters, registered voters, over the age of 90 than there are under the age of 30. Yeah. So we do plan to engage young people. We want your help. You don't even have to help us, just gotta get engaged. We need more of it, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean, the way the system works now is baby boomers decide who gets into elected office. It's just the cold hard truth. When I first ran in the House, we put all of the money that we raised into mailers, postcards. And we knew that 90% of people under 40, in the best case scenario, they take the postcard out of the mailbox and they look at it until they get to the grocery, right? But baby boomers statistically will read every single word, every single piece. Right? They also watch TV. TV is your, for you guys, TV is the thing, the screen that the people put on the wall, right? They watch cable TV, they watch TV. And so the way to win these races fundamentally is they either have to know who you are already, like incumbents who've served for 20 years or more, or very well known, or you have to go and engage in the venues with people. It's much more complicated nowadays with how stratified social media and just all the different pathways that people find information on the internet. And so some of that takes resources, but a lot of it still does take just people power. I knocked on probably 10,000 doors in my career as a state level legislator, just introducing myself to people. I would do that again. We did it all, Daniel in the back, we did it all summer. Kapolei, Hawaii Kai, Manoa, Kalihi, Pro City, Aiel, Homestead, Kalika, Eva Beach. There are 150,000 doors in the district, so I can't get to them all during an election cycle, right? So it is just about trying to engage as many people as you can, right? So to me, it's more about how many people that you can engage than it is about the money raising. The voters don't care about this. They care about what you're going to do. Yeah. I think we had him and then in the back.
Going back stateside, earlier you asked about the attack on universities.
Yeah.
You mentioned the funding cuts. A few years ago, Hawaii passed Act 46. It was like the biggest income tax cut in not history, but in a long, long time.
Yeah.
I'm reading here that by 2032, it'll be state 7.6 billion in revenue, and after that, 1.4 billion a year. Do you think it would be wise? I know there's a bill making its way through the House now. Do you think it would be wise to freeze that and replace it, and then allow the state to invest some of those billions that could be lost back into the university? Or do you think there's a better way to go about?
I think, where should I start? I think that our economy is in a downturn, and so we're not going to have the same amount of money that we had last year. We're required to do a balanced budget in Hawaii. So if you have less money than we did last year, then we're going to need to cut, or we're going to need to generate revenue. So pausing the tax breaks is what the governor is calling for right now. Most likely the top tier income breaks were too generous. So that's the right place to start. I get a little more uncomfortable when it gets to working people, to income families. It's just hard all over. When it comes to equitable tax policy, I supported the constitutional, actually I pushed for the constitutional amendment in 2016 to put a surcharge on investment property. I think in general, the billionaires in Hawaii do not pay income tax here, they pay it in Silicon Valley. And so we're not getting the tax breaks. They're not benefiting or paying from the tax breaks. The inputs that they're having are from ownership of large multi-acre estates, like up in Tamales or in the North Shore, on the North Shore of Hawaii, and so part of the reason why they come here is because the property tax rate is so low, especially on speculative investment properties. I once had a tax economist in the state explain that if you were a rich guy and you owned a $5 million beachfront property in Malibu, and you sold it and you bought an equivalent $5 million beachfront property, I don't know if you can find one on Oahu, but if you buy a $5 million property on Oahu, just the savings in your property tax rate will pay the mortgage. That's how much of a difference there is in progressive tax policy. Land ownership, taxing land ownership is the most progressive tax policy that exists. right? Problem is, we have lots of local families that own property. You heard them too. You have lots of people who are on fixed incomes, who even with the income tax rate, they're not going to get any relief if we raise property taxes and give them an income tax rate. It's going to have to come from some other thing. But in general, I support progressive tax policy. The income tax is progressive policy up to a certain point. And then when you just get into the over billionaire class here, they're just not, they just find a way around it. You can't find your way around land ownership, especially when you own the whole island or entire Ahupua'a, like on Kauai, from the mountain all the way down to the entire bay, right? That's not work. So that's my feeling on tax policy. A lot of the reason why we're having this hardship to begin with is because the tourism market is down, because Canadians don't like Americans right now, because the tariff policy is making things difficult all over, because our tourism numbers are down. We have some accountability at the state level to find other legs of the economy so that we don't have to rely so much on that. But, you know, to say that this is not caused by the craziness that's going on in DC is not true. So, yeah. Yeah, question. Yeah.
So I don't know about other people's experiences, but concerning education in Hawaii, a lot of my friends have gone out of state for college and university. And I was thinking about that too, except out of state is pricey. So I've noticed that a few of my friends have stayed here only because it's affordable, but the education quality here isn't as good as it should be. Do you have any plans to help improve education in Hawaii? That way more people can stay home if they want to.
Yeah. Second question, especially when the more people move away, the less likely they are. When people move away, they're just not as likely to ever come back. All go ahead. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I support increasing education funding. Part of what we need to do at the federal level is put back in place the federal Department of Education, which is responsible for things like student loan forgiveness, which we need to increase, especially for needed professions in Hawaii. Like in Hawaii, we're short nurses, doctors, and police officers. How can you have a functioning society? Well, nurses, doctors, and police officers, right? So getting rid of student loan forgiveness for public service, getting rid of student loan forgiveness in general, I think is a wrong way to go. We have education programs at the federal level that are under attack right now, that are really going to hurt our rural communities. We have Native Hawaiian education funding that doesn't only go to Native Hawaiians, it goes to communities where there are like populations of Native Hawaiians, which are almost always rural, underserved communities that have less infrastructure. When I was in the House, we passed the Hawaii Promise program, which was the beginning piece of free community college, which was really a concept that was put forward at the time by Bernie Sanders, president. It was last dollar funding for community college. We should expand that to undergraduate education. We got stopped short. And, I mean, education is where we should be putting the money. I think what you've seen in the last 6 months at the federal level especially is there's plenty of money to throw around and waste. And so dismantling the DOE and then putting it into ballrooms and ICE officers, all that is just the opposite way we should be going. At the state level, there's lots of accountability. We're having very controversial discussions right now about restructuring how you manage schools so that the community has more involvement and so that we can retain teachers and administrators who can work with community to make schools work better. There's a lot. Yeah, but
So my second part to that was after students moving away, a lot of people often come home to live and might want to continue living in Hawaii. However, housing isn't as affordable as in a lot of other states. Is there any plans to make improvements to that? I know a lot of developers are moving into affordable housing and management, but it's not enough to keep up with the current population. And I know that a lot of people, even once I go to UH, have to move out to other states. So I just want to know, is there, if that's go to
Yeah. So like I said, we moved away, and then when we came home, we lived with my wife's parents, and that's really the only way we got back. My mom was a nurse, and my dad was a construction worker, and they rented the whole time growing up. We raised 3 boys, I was the oldest of 3 boys. And my brother is a construction worker. He's got 4 kids, and they're living in a rental. And the difference now is that the rental market is so hot, it's so expensive. I personally worry that the landlord could just raise the rent if he doesn't at any point, and then they're looking at moving away. So if you go back and look at funding priorities, the one I've tried to push for the most in the legislature is to put money into affordable housing. That means you got to build infrastructure so that you can build up. But it also means that you have to subsidize housing so that we don't focus just on luxury and anything right on the water is ultra luxury. It's not built for people here. So we really tried to crack down on that and focus the money that we do have on building affordable housing. It's going slow. We got to do more. But things are coming online. The other part that I'm really happy actually we did was 2 years ago, we partnered with the Line fire survivors to crack down on making vacation rentals. So that's a huge problem in Maui. We put a filter at the state level that allowed the different counties that to crack down on vacation rentals. Because right now there's so much incentive to buy a limited number of old, houses that you need to renovate and just convert them into vacation rentals. There's one down the street behind my house that an old, like a Hawaiian family used to live in. They moved out, speculator from California bought it. They refurbished it, and it was all allowed under the law, except they put tiki torches in the front and a putting green, an astroturf putting green in the front yard. The house is not for families with kids to go and rent out. It's got tiki torches down, in the driveway. They've just converted it into a mini digital hotel. That's what Airbnb is. And so we passed the law, and we're allowing the counties to go ahead and just crack down on that. The rental housing units that we grew up in are slowly but steadily being turned into hotels. And that just makes it harder on everybody to find a place to live.
Hi, so I heard you talk earlier about several different things, but what stuck out to me most, how since COVID happened, there were a lot of changes that you thought they could have done differently, along with also noticing the state's need to make more money. You talked more about the tax issues and things like that. So with that in mind, I was wondering how you see the Senate collecting how Hawaii can move away more of its financial dependency on tourism in the military complex and using like indirect compensation that comes with renewing these leases that the military uses the land that is all through the islands, causing a whole bunch of environmental issues and also sensitive areas, cultural areas as well that cause degradation and destruction of those. So if it seems like the military isn't going to be leaving the Hawaiian Islands anytime soon, why isn't anyone in the Senate making sure that we're getting everything we can get out of it and making it work more and using those indirect compensation, because they do happen. I don't know if everyone is aware of that. There can be a financial stipulation put in to upgrade not just Waikiki or Manoa, but all of the communities island-wide to make sure infrastructure, school systems, resources, healthcare. If we're going to have the government be here, why don't we use Feeding the Beast to its best potential ever and make them pay for it? Where is the Senate warriors thinking about that?
Yeah. So It's a good question. I mean, just pivot real quick and go back to vacation rentals. Airbnb aggressively fought attempts for us to require their vacation rental users to register to be taxed under the hotel room tax. It aggressively fought it, and we eventually ended up making that happen through legislation. Well, they actually we threatened legislation and they agreed to voluntarily do it, but we found out that they had already agreed to voluntarily do that in other venues like Hong Kong and other Asian cities, I think Seoul. So you're right. I mean, sometimes we're not getting a fair shake. The leases in Keohokalole are 65 years old. So whoever decided, when they decided to, we looked into the history on it, and basically they could not come to an agreement back when the original leases were created on how much to charge. So they gave them a 65-year lease. And they're literally writing about how we'll just let them deal with it when the things expire. So here we are. I got involved in the fall when we were getting pretty direct overtures from the Trump administration that they were willing to come in and condemn Keohokalole. And so we went in and did the legal research on it, and it turns out that the federal government does have that authority. There was a whole bunch of work that was done behind the scenes that we can talk more about. It should happen more in a transparent way. But ultimately, Congress stepped in one of the, I think, very positive ways our congressional delegation got involved, not all of them, but specifically Senator Schatz. And basically prohibited the condemnation of Keohokalole through provision that they inserted in the National Defense Act. And so, taking that off the table allowed a little bit more time for us to continue to go through the process. The lease is going to expire in 2029. And so the fact that we were being sort of bullied into making a deal following the state law was, I think, highly problematic. When it comes to a trade-off and making a deal, what I'll tell you is that those decisions should happen after consultation with the communities where these leases are,
So
and we should follow state law.
when I used to live in Kaneohe, I was actually a delegate in my area. And so I hear you, and the people should be involved with that. Unfortunately, sadly, when one of our last meetings, we actually talked about this specifically, and just getting everyone in the Democratic Party house to agree.
Yeah.
The fear mongering, propaganda, the concern about losing jobs at the Navy shipyard, all of these things. So I'm like, this is not where it's going to become very foolish. I'm not going to avoid your time for that, but I hear you, but that's not what people are doing. There's too much fear and confusion because there's not a single message. That's why I was asking more from you, because if we are going to still have to hang out with our bedfellow partners on this island who did not have a say, why aren't we making it work for us? Because we're not. And we're all suffering in some capacity, whether we're born and bred here or have become transplants and just fall in love with the island. But no one has to or should have to be living. You're going to have to live in an occupied state, at least try to make it work for it if capitalism runs the show. So that's what we're concerned with that.
So I'll say, before we get to that part, we should require that the military follow the law. And so the law requires that if they would like to enter into a renewed lease at Keohokalole training area on Hawaii Island, where they do live fire, regimental level live fire training, it's the only place in the Pacific where they do it, then they should follow the law. The law requires an environmental impact statement before they get to renew their lease. What happened, and this goes back to your first question, is because of the threats of condemnation, we immediately moved during the interim into negotiation about compensation for the taking. We assumed that they might come in and take it. And that's, I think, the direction that's really problematic that you're talking about. They need to finish an environmental impact statement. They need to submit it according to the law. And then we'll have a discussion about whether there should be a renewal of the lease or not. If there's some deal that's cut where we get community benefit in exchange for a lease, then that violates the law. the legislature needs to come in and change the law, and then we'll have a public process. So the change in the National Defense Act basically says no condemnation. You need to follow the process right now. And so that's where we're at with that. We're sticking to the 4-year timeline because we got 3 now, right? And so what's happened since then is that the governor has finally called together an advisory group of the Native Hawaiian community to go and do consultation. This is kind of what I was talking about. We talk about military benefit on Oahu amongst ourselves here, and I think it's very valid. But having a conversation about 10,000 acres of land on Hawaii Island, on Oahu in Manoa, without Hawaii Island voices involved, not even on Hawaii Island, is the problem, right? And so they thankfully are moving in the right direction by starting engagement with the area.
Just really quickly, I want to make sure everybody gets their questions answered. We have about 20 minutes left. I already have 2 people that are benefit. We are going to have an informal talk story event outside. We have some snacks and refreshments for you. So if you have any really burning questions, please feel free to stick around for a little bit of time after the talk this.
I'll just ask them. It's good practice.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to be harping on it, just we talked about this a lot, but you know, like in 2025, we signed shadow that we're one of the most, we had one of the most regressive tax policies in the United States, and we have the lowest property tax. We have, you know, our income tax, we're taxed income at a lower rate than capital gains. We are one of like the only like 9 states that like have excise tax on groceries. I know we thought that was one of the middle thing but it, fortunately, it's like happen quite often. I guess that's what kind of what I get to is that we have so many regressive systems in place that even with like zoning law, like 80% of all like buildable land in Honolulu is it's illegal to build anything other than a single family home, which is like the most expensive form of housing. And so we have all these systems that are incredibly regressive. But it feels sometimes like the legislature or the legislature isn't able to like pass anything to address these like root issues. And like when I was in high school, like I was a member of this. I don't lobby into a lot of the grassroots lobbying. We're talking to like students. Me and a lot of other students, we create like lists of bills that we follow throughout the legislative session. And what often happens at every legislative session is like none of the things on our agenda pass, and we've been into a very frustrating situation. And which I think a lot of members of the board are more active, relate to. So like I said, like I guess like experience, like, what we need is like a unified, like proactive, like message, calling for a higher capital gains tax, a higher property tax, which we might not necessarily be popular, but is what we need if we want to address these issues. I was wondering, are these things that you support, and like do you think you can create a more unified, like progressive process?
Yeah, I think, I've introduced some of the bills, right? If you want to experiment, Hawaii amnesty. Google Hawaii amnesty, get involved. If you want housing fairness, housing justice, there's an organization called Hawaii's Future, which are young people that are leading that. And they're pushing for us to redo a lot of the rules that make things hard and cumbersome to build. But also, in 2018, as one of the younger members in the House of Representatives, alongside Representative Keohokalole, who's now a patent activist in the private sector, we pushed the legislature to fund affordable housing, and we were successful. We had $2 billion appropriation just for affordable housing development, which is now resulting in a lot of the affordable housing projects that you're seeing pop up in Honolulu now. It's taking some time because of the regulatory system, but we pushed forward and we got it. In 2022, we did the $600 million appropriation for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, which was the largest appropriation for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands in history. 30,000 Native Hawaiians are still on that Hawaiian Islands waiting list, and it was a condition of statehood. You read our admission act, the admission into the union as a state came on the condition that the state take over responsibility for the Hawaiian homestead program. And within 60 years later, the result is 30,000 beneficiaries are still waiting for a lot. So we did that. That's the largest appropriation ever. We've done community college, the Promise program for community college. You can do progressive. You should make progressive policy happen, but we need people to be engaged. Just like we don't have, as many young people as we need voting, we don't have that many people that actually come to the legislature and participate and testify, but we always have lobbyists that come and participate and testify. And the process is more fair than people think. It's not perfect, and it's often difficult. I think bills, the average bill takes 5 tries to pass. That's 5 years, right? And so, policy making takes work, and it takes action, and it takes organizing. But we can't make a difference. We have to change the trajectory. People talk about housing now in ways that they didn't when I first got into office. It's still so difficult. And you gotta remember that there are people in the community that are capable and successful. They're doing fine. And they participate in the process too. Sometimes more of them, or sometimes they have more money and are able to be more persuasive. Okay.
One of the questions I have is that we've been talking about affordable housing, but part of affordable housing is the police. I personally have been under the point on Christmas Eve, a lot of us and the neighbors, all about our utility bills that mine jumped from over 300 to about 12. A lot of bills jumped for that month, and both the rental property that we go through because it's on military land and on electric basically said, sorry, to pay this money, you're convicted. What are some strategies that are coming from that? What happened because our prices have been, they dropped down, but they're still not back in for the last 2 bills.
No, it's not. No, it's not, but that's a really good point.
All of it.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm going to start with, the most frustrating about this whole situation, is that if you go and Google solar energy development, China has blown right past the United States and are now at scale and the largest producer of solar panels. And when we entered into the Paris Climate Agreement, the conservatives were just, howling and complaining about how we were imposing restrictions on our own energy development, on oil development, when you had other countries like China that were still burning coal and polluting. And you fast forward 6 years and they have blown right past us and they're cornering the world market on the sale of solar panels that were developed based off of research and trial and error and development and tax breaks in the state. We have been on the leading edge of renewable energy development for the last 20 years, especially on solar. And so it's deeply frustrating that basically at the federal level, there's a ban on renewable energy development. If there's a federal ban, there's federal funding or some federal land. Offshore wind, all of it is dead in the water right now, and it's drill, baby, drill, or back for oil. And that stuff is not any cheaper than it's ever been. In fact, it's more expensive. And when the world goes to solar at scale, we are going to be left behind. And so that's the really frustrating part. We've had real challenges because we're an island state with sourcing all the materials that we need to do a full renewable energy conversion. When you get solar if you own your home and you have solar on your rooftop, you save a lot of money. And then you go get an EV, not a Tesla anymore, which see a lot of them out there because those are most likely homes that have solar on the roof, so that they don't have to pay gas anymore. They charge with their solar. We have been aggressively moving to try and get there, and we're in a really fraught moment right now with the political policy on the federal level. You don't have tax credits anymore to do solar. all of the large scale stuff is dying because they were reliant on federal support and you can't get approvals anymore. So we have to get back to renewable development. It's going to be painful for a while, but like I said, China is at scale right now. And what I mean by at scale is they're making like cost level development of cheap solar panels that they're going to export to countries all over the world. And we have to find ways to get back to that. And then we also have to hold our electrical utilities accountable to make sure that the price you're paying every month is not a result of negligent operation, but the true, reflects the true cost of what it is to live in Hawaii and pay for energy. I don't know exactly why you guys are getting it in I'd like to talk to you after we can follow up. So I'm the Commerce Committee Chair, so we regulate the utility, and we've done a lot over the last couple of years to try and make sure that they stay locally owned. They almost went into bankruptcy. I mean, they almost went into bankruptcy after the Maui wildfires. They do have the plan to get out of it. It's going to require, some of that cost might actually be hardening the grid. You know, there are thousands of poles that are just flimsy and they need to replace them. They've put in new technology around their utility boxes and transformers so the stuff doesn't spark the way it did. There's new technology now that's being applied. And, you know, that stuff takes money, but I think it's money that most residents would be willing if they understood that it's going to make our community safer and more resilient. They have live 24/7 cameras now that get at the top of Mount Kilo that have spotted fires early since 2023. So, you know, I don't think that's the reason why you have jumped the way you did. We should go and look into it. But I think part of what needs to happen is at federal level, we have to go back to acknowledging climate is a thing and that we need to pursue renewable energy development, especially with the development of AI. You know, we haven't gotten to it yet because Hawaii is going to be the last place for the AI boom to consider building out data centers. It's too expensive. I used to be the tech committee chair. It's too expensive. Land is too expensive, and electricity is too expensive to build a data center. But in communities across the country where AI comes in and builds data centers, we see massive increases in utility rates for the surrounding community. So we're not going to have any of that in Hawaii. We're not. I mean, it's not here yet, but it's something we got to do.
Your last question.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
First session, you have many questions about the comparative on one race over microfresh.
Hi. So shifting a bit, I guess, to agriculture, there's something that was just passed through in the state legislature, SB 2006 SD1, which basically targets employee housing on farms or agricultural.
Okay.
And on the federal level, I advocated for a bit. I think the problem with employee is food security for people having to rely so much on extended imports, and where we have had a historic and continuing now unbought system that cultivated and when cultivated properly can produce hopefully like solve a lot of these problems. So you know these imports will have to lower their prices at the very least to provide some level of competitiveness domestically at scale. I believe Joe Takuda, the representative PT growing food app, which kind of helps on small scale. It provides like housing funding for small scale agriculture for individuals, but on like an organizational level, with organizations working to cultivate this kind of optimized system, would there be any would there be anything that you would do on that federal level to advocate for organizations to receive more funding, more types of funding, or and I guess that's regulatory things so that they I guess extend.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for your question. The bill you're talking about, yeah, it makes it easier to build housing for farmers. And most of our communities, especially the older communities, started as plantation camps, which was ag housing, and then the community built up around it. A lot of our best ag land, unfortunately, is underneath concrete on the island of Oahu, but that's not the case across the state. And we still have, I think you just said 80% of the land in Hawaii does not have urban construction on it. A lot of it is ag land that's not used right now because we're short farmers. Electricity is expensive. We don't have infrastructure to irrigate fields in a very equitable way. And we need places for farm workers to live so they can cultivate crops and then continue to make a living. So there are plenty of avenues for innovation and for development of like food growing opportunities, innovative ways to grow more food, and to do it in a way that helps support community. In 2016, one of the earlier bills I passed was to confirm this partnership in a NOAA program that was put together by President Obama at the end of his term called the National Estuary Research Reserve. Basically a reserve in Kaneohe Bay that recognizes the food growing potential of the area of Papua. And so from the top of Papua all the way up into the bay, into the nearshore area, they designated that Papua as a reserve for research and food-based cultivation. So they've been building it out right now, which gives federal support there and allow community to come in and find better ways to grow food in a diversified way at scale so that we can, so that we don't have to worry about the ships not coming in or, having kids just using carrots for lunch, in the schools. So there are lots of ways to make that happen. There are lots of problems that we have at the state level. What I want to stress, and this is what I realized when I was in these seats as an undergrad as well, is, eventually I came to realize that I really wanted change to happen, and it wasn't happening at the speed that I wanted it to. And I had this, and I just stopped waiting for somebody to do it, and I got involved with it. Right? And it's still a slog. And we still go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it's frustrating, but it's for me, I really enjoy it. I love being a part of it. I love having conversations with you guys, and I love being a part of the actual change when you can make it happen. You cannot expect that it's going to happen unless you get involved and do it yourself. If you care about something enough to take action, then you got to do it. Right? That's your plan. So I really want to encourage you guys to get involved in the process. If you have questions, if you want to get involved with stuff at the state level, we can help you do that. If you want to intern with us, we have some interns here who can tell you about how crazy it is to work in our offices. If you guys want to get involved at the federal level, there are plenty of coalitions and partnerships that are on the ground right now. Hawaii has traditionally been the tip of the spear on progressive issues. We were the first to codify. I mean, we were at the leading edge of marriage equality. We were on the leading edge of abortion. We're on the leading edge of abortion again after Roe. A lot of the civil rights victories of the last 3 generations have started in places like Hawaii because we have tolerance of different ways of life, and we agree and decide collectively that everybody should just get to live and be happy. We're not going to get enough people's business to tell them how to live their lives, right? That's what the law is. So please get involved. Doesn't even have to be with me. I'd love to have your support and have you guys come and help. Let's talk some more outside. Thanks so much for being with me and letting me ask questions.
Speak with us about your legislature. On behalf of the UHM Democrats, thank you for your continued curiosity and questions. Sorry that we didn't get to everybody, but we're so grateful that you were able to come. Stay curious and please enjoy the refreshments outside and informal talk stories.